First, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank President Matsumoto and the Kyoto University for your kind invitation for me to be able to speak in front of such a distinguished audience. In coping with the central theme of this conference, I set the title of my talk is the Chinese character and the cultural influence. So I'll give a very short and comprehensive introduction to the ideas. And many of the points I mentioned, you will be listening. I think we'll be listening to much more deep discussions in the papers in the following sessions. But according to the legend, more than 4,000 years ago, the Yellow Emperor's historian official Changjie created Chinese characters, and then suddenly heaven rained with grains, and the ghosts cried in the night. And let's take a look at what happened that day. So we have the characters, mountain and even water. But how can river and the creek be expressed? They're both waters. Yes, we just use the water and respective sound. So we all know that writing is the medium and the vehicle of culture. The four most famous ancient writing systems in the world, the Mesopotamian cuneiform, Chinese oracle bone inscriptions, the Egyptian hieroglyphics, and the Maya scripts. Of the four, only Chinese character writing system is still in use. All other three just vanished. Why is this? So if we go back to the ancient time, I think our ancestors, if they want to put down something, some ideas or for communication, the most natural choice is to draw, to make the pictographs. You see the very similarity between the Egyptian hieroglyphics and the Chinese oracle inscription. You see the similar crouching posture of women, and the sun, of course, is the one and only. And the most striking thing is, to me, is the similarity between the vessels. The Egyptian and the Chinese used to keep their precious liquid. But there's a limit for picture writing. So the question is, how can abstract concept be portrayed? So in the case of a Chinese, it evolved into ideograms and the logic complex. So in the case of ideograms, they're very indicative, like the up and the down, the right and left and the right. And the logic complex is normally composed of two pictographics and linked with a special logic, which gives a new meaning. We have a tree here and the sun here, but if we combine these two in such a sense that the sun coming from behind the tree, and that's what you see when you face the east. So this is the Chinese character for the East. And you have a man here and a tongue or speech here. When you put these together, you have the word character xin. Xin, when it's used as a noun, is the letter. When it's used as an adjective, it's trustworthy. So human words are trustworthy. So our ancient Chinese mind is quite wishful. And you see a lot of more interesting examples. I just saw one Professor Matsumoto showed us with a woman here and a child on the other side. But here, that means good. And you have a sun and the moon is shining, of course, and the two trees make a wood. So when the civilization develops into a certain level, there's a requirement for one-to-one correspondence between the spoken and the written language, and obviously the pictographs are unable to do this, and they are gradually replaced by phonetic spelling systems. But why did Chinese characters uniquely develop into different pathways? In my opinion, the answer is the appearance of pictophonetic. It's to use the simple character as the radical or part of the character. Employs sound that will keep the meaning of the other part and create a more complicated homophones. So its appearance solves the problem of bridging the spoken language and the written one. Where there's a sound, there's a character. So we're going to use this word, tone, as an example. Tone itself is the same and identical. Now we have a series of tones, they all pronounce the same, but with different radical. When this tone coupled with the metal, it means copper. When this tone coupled with the tree, it's the wood oil tree. And this tone coupled with the bamboo is the bamboo cylinder. When it's cupped on top of it, the grass, this is shunjiku, sukiyaki vegetable. And the pictophonetic characters are the most convenient means to create new characters. I was a student of chemistry, so I used the periodic table of elements, for example. For all the metallic elements, or metals, each and everyone has a gold or metal radical. So we have these metals for copper, cobalt, manganese, radium, uranium. For all the long metals, they each has a stone radical. We have the stone radical here. It's for copper, boron, phosphorus, sulfur, and silicon. All gaseous elements, the gaseous elements, are with the gas radicals, like this. So it's oxygen, helium, hydrogen, chlorine, and fluorine. And we have only two elements in liquid state at the ambient conditions, and this is bromine and mercury. They're all with waters. So there's no exception. So proportionally speaking, the pictophonetic character accounts for the highest percentage. At the time of Qing and the Han Dynasty, already past 80% of all characters. In modern common use Chinese character, 90% are pictophonetics. So if it were not for the pictographic, I'm sorry, this mistake is pictophonetic characters. So more than 80% of the Chinese characters we use today would have no means for expression. And it would probably, actually, almost definitely be replaced by a phonetic spelling system. So perhaps the appearance of this pictophonetic character really was the time when heaven rained with grains, and the ghosts cry in the night. This is the moment that startled the heaven, the earth, and it moved the ghost and the spirit. The flexible use of the 6 rules of creating Chinese character result in the expression of shape, of meaning, as well as song. So the majority of the new characters can be guessed if we see a new word. We don't know what it is, and that can be guessed simply by reading one part of it. And you get almost 80% chance to be right. Simultaneously preserving the characteristic visual recognition. So it is the only ancient writing system still in use. This is visually recognized. There are 2 distinct consequences of for a visually recognized language. The first one is the visual recognition language does not change according to dialectic difference. Phonetic writing changes according to the regional spoken language, evolving into dialectic writings. For example, Latin language in Europe evolved into original dialectical writings, becoming today's French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Italians. We know there are many dialects in China, at least 8 major dialects, but they all use the same written language. The other consequence is, of course, the unique artistic element of Chinese character, the beauty of calligraphy. This shows a seal script written by Mr. Du Zhonghao, a contemporary calligrapher in Taiwan, and the regular script by Ouyang Xun in the 8th century Tang Dynasty. And this is a cursive script by Yu Youren, it's considered as one of the greatest calligraphers of the last century, and a running script by the famous Su Dongpo. So the flowing beauty of the calligraphy, and it's only matched by the watery music of a cello. We can see on this.
书法线条的自由流动，形成书写时快慢缓急的节奏韵律，随着书写者的心境而起伏变化，仿佛一种看得见的音乐旋律，流于世人无尽的想象。
The static beauty of Chinese character is showing by a very special kind of art. It's called a seal script. The history of the art of the seal script can be backdated to the Warring State period. Fusing Chinese calligraphy, blade lines, and the very specific quality of the natural stone and the metal, we have this very classically elegant simplicity, showing the whole universe in the square inch of the script. And in recent years, the beauty of calligraphy is even fused with body language. And this is shown by the very famous Gate dancing groups that will show you how the dancers express the beauty of calligraphy. Sorry. Okay. So the standardization of Chinese characters has given rise to 5,000 years of continuous, inclusive Chinese culture. And Chinese character is also the vehicle that propagates Chinese culture into other Asian peoples. So more than 60% of Japanese and Korean total vocabulary can be traced back to Chinese origin. And the internationality of Chinese character lasted for more than 1,000 years till 20th century. So the spoken Chinese language is by no means international, but Hanzi or Kenji it is. Historian Professor Nishijima Sadao of Tokyo University, he proposed the theory of the East Asian world, holding that Hanzi or Kenji cultural circle is comprised of the following essential factors: the investiture, Hanzi Confucianism, Mahayana Buddhism, technology, and the imperative law. Of all these influences, Hanzi is the most important one. The Greater China and the East Asian economic circle actually overlaps with the Hanzi cultural circle. You can see from this map. So mainland China, Hong Kong, Macau, Taiwan, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, Singapore together hold more than 70% of the foreign reserve of the world. And the population in this circle comprises 1/4 of the world. And today, more than 30 million so-called foreigners are learning Chinese. And the renaissance of Chinese culture is sprouting. And Hanzi would once again play the role of the vehicle and the medium for conveying some new universal values to the 21st century by fusing with the Western culture, just like my previous speaker mentioned many times. The importance of internationalization of Chinese character is being re-evaluated. But there were times of doubt and worry. The first came when the time of the rise of personal computer, because of the input system barrier, once led to the worry of Chinese information delay. But thanks to the effort of the past few decades, various systems of transforming Hanzi into phonetic spelling systems have been invented for inputting Chinese. And the maturity, that is the maturity of the touchscreen handwriting technique, brings about a genuine Chinese input system. This is a true milestone. So now you use the touchscreen handwriting system if you input a Chinese character by writing. Instead of seeing a group of homophones at the bottom of the screen, which sound similarly, for you to pick up the one you want. In this case, it shows a group of words that look similar. So this is what I call a genuine Chinese input system. The visual art of Chinese character inspired technology advancements, such as the unique art font Steve Jobs put into the Apple system, and the high recognition accuracy of the HTC technology. The unique visual recognition system of Chinese character is gradually developing to different dimensions of culture and creative arts to become one of the leading trends in the 21st century. And the second complication comes from the traditional character versus the simplified characters. I have no time to go deeper into this very complicated issue. I just show you a few examples. In the wake of the simplification of Chinese words in mainland China, there are some good ones and there are also some bad ones. for example, I just show you this one. This one means dust. It's composed of two parts. A deer animal running over the surface of the earth. So you see the dust. This is the traditional Chinese character. But in the simplified Chinese character, the part of the earth is retained. But the deer is replaced with tiny. So tiny earth is dust. It's much simplified, but the width of creation Chinese character remained. So this is a good one. And then here's a not so good one. This is a face. Pronunciation is mian, face or facial. But in the traditional Chinese, these two words pronounced the same, face, facial, mian, but they mean differently. This is a face, and this is like la mian, noodle or flour, because we have a radical, which means wheat. It's the flour coming from wheat. But in the simplified word, we use the same mian for face and for noodle. This is by no means logical. So what we do with this problem? So my organization is having a joint project with the Ministry of Education in mainland China, which we're building in the cloud. That means we use cloud computing technology, a Chinese language knowledge base. And that knowledge base will provide the functions of a cultural exchange, cultural heritage, and the cultural popularization. So in the case of a cultural heritage, we also encountered the problem or the question, so why can people today still read and understand the official script 2,000 years ago? This picture shows the Ma Wangdui official script on Chinese silk. I have a personal experience with this script. When I visit the Ma Wangdui Museum in Changsha, Hunan Province, in 2003, I was reading this script. I could read about maybe 60% of it, and then I overheard someone behind me ask me in English, "Are you really reading this?" I looked back. There was an old couple from the United States. I told them, "Of course, I'm reading this." And the gentleman told his wife, "Look, we are eyewitnessing a living ancient civilization. Because here comes a guy in front of the script written 2,000 years ago, and direct communicate with the writing. It's the writing system." And another thing is, of course, we need the exchange, especially with the mainland Chinese language. They develop into quite different things in both pronunciation or the way you write and even the meaning. I just give you one most interesting example. So, 窝心, which means heartwarming Taiwan, but means heart upset in mainland China. It's just the opposite. We do need a cultural popularization with this knowledge base. So that will provide the functions of a digital publication for e-books and mobile apps, and for education promotions, Chinese education, or online Chinese learning as a foreign language, and of course a platform of interdisciplinary cooperation with the cultural creative industry or website builders. And this system will be launched in, let's say, a little bit more than 2 months. The first version. So we'll go back. If we go to the part of the search engine of the system, you want to, let's say, look up a phrase, 土豆, literally translation of earth being, and you will find in parallel the 注音 Taiwan and the pinyin in China, 土豆. And then you find the meaning in Taiwan means peanuts, but in mainland China it means potato. Of course, you also see the technical terms in parallel, because most of them were translated from English, but they translate differently. So you can see the difference and for comparison. For the part of Hanzi arts, there will be a collection of hundreds, thousands of the best calligraphy, more than 1,000 years. And in the area of online learning, you can find all kinds of softwares, the database, and the archive, and the learning tools, and even the testing software. You can test the properties of yourself. Of course, you also learn it just by yourself. For instance, if you want to things like this. Okay. So this platform is meant to help all Chinese or Chinese users, Hanzi users, recognize both traditional and simplified Chinese characters. Its future development will be decided by the users. So I would imagine that in the future, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau users may adopt a few more good simplified characters, like we just mentioned. And those from mainland China, Singapore, may drop the use of a few bad ones. So the users could join together to create a re-standardization of Chinese character. Shu Tong Wen, literally speaking, word by word, means writing same character, or it's the standardization of Hanzi. And the first time was achieved by the first emperor over 2,000 years ago with brutal force. And this time, it will be achieved through Wang Dao, a democratic and benevolent process. I thank the National Palace Museum and National Museum of History in Taipei and the editorial office of Chinese Linguipedia. And this is the name of the website. So you can look it up a little bit more than 2 months later. And before closing, I must admit that when I told that Chinese character or Hanzi being the only visually recognized word still in use today, I exaggerated a little. Actually, there are some other pictographs still in use by minorities. These three words we have here. This is we. Actually, this is Dongba pictographs used by Naxi people in Yunnan province, and probably also in the East Tibet. And the three words is we, go, drink. Thank you for listening.